Teamwork isn't just nice to have in business, it's the undisputed competitive advantage. When your team members work as a unified force, your whole operation benefits through higher productivity, thriving creativity, and unstoppable momentum. Welcome to the Impactful Teamwork Podcast, where we share with you strategies and tactics to help you develop game-changing teams so that you and your business can make a real difference in the world.
So welcome everyone to this week's edition of Impactful Teamwork. My name's Julia Felton. I'm going to be your host and guide again today as we delve into the issue of teamwork. And in the fashion that I've had over the last few months, delighted to bring you another guest today. And I'm delighted to invite Regina Bergman, who is the CEO of the Holy Grail. Sounds very exciting, doesn't it? To join us on the show. Regina, welcome to Impactful Teamwork. Really happy to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here, Julia. Just one minor correction. I'm the co-founder of the CEO of Holy Grail.
Oh,
okay. But I am the CEO of Bridgeport Strategies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All good. And it was funny just because before we came on air, we were talking about collaboration. So I love that your business is part of a collaboration. So that's really fun. We talk a lot on this podcast about the power of collaboration. And I know we're going to be talking about teams and the importance of teams and how, as founders, as we're scaling businesses, we need to work with our teams. And we always talk on the podcast here about teamwork is a competitive superpower that you have within business.
I love that.
Because so many people don't use their teams effectively. And of course, our teams are our source of collaboration. So before we dive into the content, would you just like to introduce yourself, tell everyone else about you so that we've got some kind of context? And I know you
Sure.
do lots of different things, wear quite a few different hats. So share with us a little bit about what you're up to.
Yes, I have a closet full of hats. I have been an entrepreneur as long as I can remember. As a youth, I was an entrepreneur as a young teenager, even before then. And I know I was revealed to me some years ago that my purpose in life is to help others achieve their full potential. And so the work that I do is to help that, whether that's the CEO or the members of their team, doesn't matter who it is. My job is to help them achieve their full potential. So we get the people in the right positions. We get the CEO leading appropriately so that they have that cohesive team. So some of my experiences, I had a staffing firm for 12 and a half years. Yeah, I definitely learned a lot about teamwork in that process. And we set ourselves apart in terms of best fit. Oftentimes you'll hear in the staffing industry the expression of throwing bodies at jobs. We didn't do that. Our role was to find the best candidate for that position, for that supervisor, for that company, so that it would be that win-win-win experience. And for me, it's got to be a triple win or I don't want to do it. It's got to be a win for you, a win for me, a win for our clients or whoever the other stakeholders are involved in that. And so we used a series of tools, one of which was a very powerful personality profile that is about 90% predictive of success on the job. So that when we understood what the requirements for the position were, we could make sure that employee, that person we were recommending fit that position. And we could tell the employer ahead of time where the bumps in the road were going to be, because the first 90 days on the job, you don't know who you've hired.
No.
Yeah. The mask is on. You don't know who they are. And after about 90 days, they start getting comfortable. It's okay. I can let my hair down a little bit. I can be me. I can let me out. And then you start finding out who they are. So we would sit with the employer and say, this is who this person is. And these are the challenges you're going to find in about 90 days. And sure enough, they'd come back to us and say, you are so right. But they were able to make the decision beforehand of, this is a risk I'm willing to take, or this is a shortcoming that I can live with, or no, that's a deal breaker. I don't want that person. And we rarely had anybody that the employer came back and said, oh yeah, this is not a good fit, because we spent so much time on the front end making sure it was a good fit, not filling jobs with bodies. So
And
the staffing
I
business,
think,
yeah.
yeah, go on. Sorry. I was just about to say, I think that's so important because there are so many people out there. And I know we're all working with really tight deadlines, aren't we? And there's the habit that somebody leaves and we're just like, a warm body is better than nobody. And
Yeah, and
actually,
it's not.
that's such a flawed decision.
It
Um,
is. It is. Yeah.
So I love that it empowers leaders to make sure that they, like you say, you never know 100% whether a candidate's going to definitely fit in because what
Yeah.
they say and how they show up can be quite different. You're stacking the odds in your favor anyway, which I think is
Exactly.
really important.
Yeah.
So I'm curious then, what maybe you could share is what's the biggest staffing nightmare in terms of team misfit that you've seen, either in organizations you've consulted and worked with, or maybe from being a staffer, you hear about other things in organizations that didn't work. What some of the worst stories you've heard? 'Cause
Yeah.
we always talk about the great things, right? But focus on what are some of the pitfalls that can happen out there?
And I guess for me at the moment, what comes to mind is some of the experiences in my staffing days and how important it is to do that pre-screening, pre-qualifying, some behavioral interviewing. I can recall a young lady that I interviewed one day, and it was I was doing a behavioral interview with her, and I don't remember the exact question that I had asked her, but the response was that, and this is the beauty. Let me just back up and say this is the beauty of a behavioral interview: is people tell you things that they wouldn't have told you, that it's still within the bounds of what's legal to acquire, making sure that you stay within those bounds, obviously. But they'll tell you things that they wouldn't in a traditional interview. So the story that she gave me was that she had been working at a dry cleaner's, and her boss called her in to his office and said, this particular customer, an older gentleman that you banter with when he comes in, he doesn't like it and he wants you to stop. The next time that gentleman came into the store, now this is what she's telling me in this behavioral interview, okay? The next time he came in, she said, I never have been mean to you, but I can be. Am I going to place her with one of my clients? Never.
Yeah.
But if I were doing a traditional interview, I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know that she'd had that behavior, that she would treat a customer that way, because she'd be telling me what she thought I wanted to hear. Yeah.
So just help the listeners understand the difference between a behavioral interview then when we're recruiting versus what might be deemed a traditional interview. I think because I think that's very important for people to understand.
Yes.
Because all of us are trying to recruit more people into our business at some point as we're scaling and we're getting more team members in. So I think there's probably a real nuance there that people need to understand. If you wouldn't mind sharing that,
I don't mind at all. So typically we're asking about their experiences. Most people have gone through a typical interview. The difference in the behavioral interview is we're asking them to tell us about a time that they experienced X.
Yep.
Now they go into storytelling mode. Now they tell us all those details like she did. I never have been mean to you, but I could be.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're asking them to tell you about an experience they had and how they handled it. And does that meet your culture? Does that meet your requirements or not? You're the judge of that. And as you listen to that story that they're going to tell you. And so you need to know what the requirements of the position are, and make sure that your behavioral questions help you to identify, can they meet those requirements? If you have somebody who's very customer facing, you need to have some questions about how they dealt with the public. Yeah. I had another situation around that same time. I had a young man come in, and our hiring manager was supposed to interview him, and for whatever reason, he couldn't that day, so I interviewed him. Funny thing, after the interview, he went and found the hiring manager and complained to him about how I handled the interview, which was hilarious. So this young man, he comes in and he's sitting across from me, and I am looking at his knees sticking out of a pair of jeans with holes in the knees. He's come in for a job interview and he is sitting there with holes in the knees of his jeans. And I'm sitting there looking at your knees. Is that the way you would show up for a traditional job interview with this attire? And he said, no. And I said, why did you think that was appropriate to come here today that way? Go home, change clothes, come back when you're prepared for an interview. So, had a gal with pajama pants, pajama people were wearing. I don't know if they did. Yeah. She came for an interview and or came to work. She came to work in that. I said, go home, change clothes. This is not the way. And she was public facing and she was, inappropriately attired. But have policies around those kinds of things. Know what your policies are and make sure that your policies are in alignment as well with the job position. And what I mean by that is if you say, for example, you can only have 2 pairs of earrings on, there needs to be a reason for that. Not just that you don't approve of more than that. Yeah. So make sure your policies are in alignment with the requirements and with the laws.
Yeah. And you bring up such an interesting point there. I'm going to talk about the man with the holes in the jeans.
Sure.
I just love this. But on one of the previous podcasts we were talking about credibility and how you show up. And we were talking particularly on Zoom or Teams remotely.
Oh, yeah.
It's really important to be really conscious about what's the kind of image you want to portray. And obviously the same in you. But one thing I'm curious about, because I'll put warts and all, this is what I did. This is a good example. I like to share the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Sure.
And as an interviewer, obviously you've got loads of experience, but I remember my first time interviewing somebody in my corporate role for a new team member. And I was in a accountancy firm, very traditional navy and grey suit type thing in London. And this gentleman turned up and he was wearing what I can only describe as a plum-coloured suit.
Okay.
And in that moment, I couldn't take him seriously. That was all I know now. I didn't know this at the time. I know now my unconscious bias and everything coming in. How do we, when we're interviewing team members or potential team members, how do we get our own bias out the way to give people a chance? Because I never know. That guy could have been amazing. I will never know to this day because I just made a decision. Within 5 seconds of meeting him, you're not wearing the right appropriate attire for this job. Then that was my filter. Yeah. Nobody else was saying the world according to Julia. Yeah. I just couldn't hire you. And I remember the interview was 45 minutes of pain because in my mind, I wasn't going to hire him, but I felt like I need to go through it. I had to go through it. I'd love your thoughts.
That's a really good question because we all do have our biases. So I think it's really important in that respect to have, or what comes to my mind at the moment, is that having a good policy manual, a good structure built around your hiring process, making sure that anybody who's involved in it knows that and knows the legalities of hiring. A similar line to that a little bit, and it makes me think of a similar thing is when we engage people in discussion outside of the requirements of the job, then we learn things that we shouldn't learn. Yeah. And if it ever can be proven that you used those things to not hire somebody, that's not a good thing. That's going to cost you dearly. An example, taking someone out to eat for that interview. And in the course of them ordering their meal, you find out maybe that they're diabetic, or you find out something about their physical challenges and then if you use that information to not make that hire, you've just put yourself crosshairs of a lawsuit that you're not going to win.
Yeah. And it's difficult, isn't it? Where you get all of this information, you're creating a round picture of yourself, and legalities both in the US here and in the UK about what you can and can't ask are very strict. And rightly so.
Right, because then our biases come in, and it's just exactly what you're talking about. If you learn something, your bias may be, oh, that's going to cause some challenges for me later on. I just don't want to deal with it. Whatever. Yeah, plum suit. And so how do we, I think the way we keep our biases out is to understand the process and the legality of hiring and make sure that our people who are dealing with that are well trained and that it's something that you revisit with those people. Don't expect that you're going to train them once. They've got it forever. Any profession has a review process, right? I'm going to go renew my certification for X, right?
Yes.
Make sure that your people are well trained and that you continue that training. You have those updates and that you yourself are well trained as the employer. You need to be
Yeah.
on top of it and know what you can and cannot do.
Yeah.
Along that line, I did a workshop for a group of employers and covered some of this in that workshop. And afterwards, almost immediately afterwards, see someone sitting with applicants talking over a meal kind of thing. I'm like, did you not learn? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, both you and I working with companies that are scaling, what are some of the bigger challenges that you see come across for leaders as they're starting to scale their business from both a people and a profit perspective? Because we're always about how do we balance the people and the performance at the same time? Because we've got some
Right.
CEOs totally focused on the numbers and then maybe not such great leadership and inspiration for their team. Some people that can be the other extreme, totally people focused, but then actually the business doesn't sustain
Yeah.
itself because they're not profitable enough. How do we navigate? It's a tricky path there down the middle, right? To
is.
balance both sides. And I'll share some tips and
Sure.
strategies that listeners put in place.
And there are multiple facets of that process. It starts with the leadership of that CEO, as you mentioned. They need to have those people skills themselves. And a lot of CEOs are so driven and the people skills get left behind. But if you don't have those people skills and that ability to draw your team in, to give them a common goal to work for, let them see your vision. What is the vision that you're striving for and include them in that vision? How do they play a part in achieving it so that we're all working towards the same thing? So now we have energy around that. It energizes me just talking about that. It just
For sure.
yeah, let's do this. And then so the leadership of the CEO is where we start, right? And then the team needs to be, I'm going to say, recruited, coming back to all the things we've just talked about, hiring, now making sure that you have the right people in the right positions, that you're communicating with them, that they feel a part of a team, and then you're not just throwing tasks at them, just throwing things at them but strategically developing that team that runs like that well-oiled machine. That in itself will contribute greatly to the profitability of the company. Because that's also, if you've got the right people in the right places, that means that your customer service and retention is improved. That's adding to the top line. And I'm going not to the bottom line, I'm going to say to the top line.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference between top line and bottom line. Making sure you know your numbers, that you know where profitability is, you know how to increase that profitability, you know your numbers, you know what those expenses are and what drops to the bottom line and how can I adjust this? One of the things that we see over and over again is folks discounting their prices. I got to discount it. Most of the time, that discount eats up your profit because you didn't run your numbers first. So usually a little price increase can get you a whole lot farther. And you just go in the hole more with that discounting. Again, just not hiring bodies to fill those roles, but making sure you've got the right people. And then continuously develop them, help them grow, get them aligned with the business. Watching your KPIs, knowing what you need to be looking at, measuring things. If we're trying to scale too fast and we don't have systems in place and we're not looking at our KPIs, we're going to implode. And if we're taking it all on our plate as that CEO, we're going to implode. And that destroys not only our business, all of our employees are now without a job, but what happens on our family side of things? What happens to our personal life? What happens to our health, to our relationships when we try to take it all on as the CEO? A good organization that can scale has to have structure.
So really interesting, because obviously you've alluded there to one of the challenges in a scaling business is the CEO becoming the bottleneck of
Absolutely.
everything. They're trying to get
Absolutely.
everything to go through them, and therefore not
Yes.
leveraging the team and empowering
Yeah.
the team
Yeah.
in the right way. So I'm really curious, because perhaps you can say, you mentioned you're the co-CEO of Holy Grail,
Right.
and there's been a lot in the press in the last couple of weeks about now people like Netflix and Oracle and Comcast moving towards this co-CEO model, because there's so much, right? One CEO can do it all. So I'm wondering, perhaps you could just share, and I know this is totally off the cuff and I've caught you off guard here.
I'll do my
You know,
best.
what do you think the benefits are of being co-CEOs in a business?
And that's an interesting question. And being in that situation without having planned to be in that situation.
Oh, okay.
So my business partner and I on the CEO Holy Grail, we met, a little over a year ago, year and a half ago, maybe, and it just hit it off immediately. Just one of those instant connections. And
Yeah.
it didn't take us long to figure out we wanted to do something together. We wanted to work together in
Cool.
some way. And the CEO Holy Grail was the outcome of that. And so we're still in that process. That took us a while to get there. She has a business, I have a business, and then we have the CEO Holy
Yeah.
Grail together. And so it's now one of the things that we are doing is really, I mentioned earlier that I've used a personality profile in my staffing business. I still totally believe in that profile and use that profile. But we're also looking at another profile that gives us another view. So we're looking at each other and saying, who are you? Who am I? Who are you? How do we balance this relationship so that we maximize our efficiency? So rather than just having two CEOs and saying, okay, you take this and I'll take this, where are our strengths? One of her strengths is sales and being able to quickly read people. One of my strengths is nurturing and building those
Right.
relationships, right? So how do we divide things so that we each have our strengths supporting the business? And so I think there's great value potentially in having those two CEOs if you make sure that one, they're compatible and respectful of each other and understand each other's strengths and weaknesses and can play to the opposite so that I can make up for your weaknesses and you can make up for mine, that we
Yeah, no,
complement each other.
Yeah, and it's interesting in the article I was reading about this, and I've just run a webinar this morning actually about this whole topic of shared leadership and co-CEOs. So it was the news article came out of the blue, and I was like, oh wow, because this is something I talk about all the time, because I'm often looking to nature for solutions, and like my horse herd, the leadership is shared, right? So I've been banging on about shared leadership for ages. So it's
Love
nice.
that.
Yeah.
I love
But
that.
I think you're absolutely right. Recognizing each other's strength and leveraging those, I think, is so important. As the same that we need to do for our team, and actually help our team members understand the strengths of each other. We always have the good old situation, don't we, where, I don't know, somebody gets promoted to sales director and now, they're responsible for doing all the numbers in the business. That's not where their zone of genius is. And I do have a pet bug about people getting promoted to leadership positions when they are experts. So the person who is your best person at sales might not be the best person to be the sales director because they're different skill sets. But unfortunately, in the way that we've structured our organizations, often they can't get a promotion until they manage people. And that drives me insane, because I know you do quite a lot of work with trades, if I was correct. And the best joiner or the best electrician, he's not necessarily the person running the business, but he's really good
At what
at
he
his
does.
art. Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
Can I share
how,
a story with you?
please. Yeah.
So when I had my staffing firm, one of the things that we did was to work with other companies, go in with this personality profile and profile either a department or the whole organization. We used it in a hospital for their team building. So we took their senior folks and all the departments, had them all take the profile, brought them all together, did team building events with them. But we had a bank that we worked with as well. And we get a small group of their folks just to show the power of it. And the bank was well impressed with it and said, okay, yes, you can come in and do the whole organization. They had a young lady in the accounting department, back of the bank. Nobody ever saw her, no interaction with the public in any way. After we gave them their profiles back, they moved her from the accounting department to sit outside the president's office, greeting people all day long, handling everything for the president of the bank. Total switch, but only because they now could see where her strengths were and put her in a spot where her strengths were. And that's, if you want a good cohesive team, help identify those strengths and put them where they should be. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We so often promote people beyond their abilities, and then we're disappointed or we lose that talent that in its right position was an extreme asset to the company. And now they're unhappy and you're unhappy and you wind up parting ways and you lost a valuable asset.
Yeah. And I remember when I was working in the corporate world, I didn't know anything about really personality profiling. I actually work with something called the GC index, which is not personality, but it's your energy for impact. So where you're making the most impact, which is similar working on your kind of strengths, where your energy lies. And I had a data manager, her name was Jane, and every single staff appraiser I was told her she needs to get better at spreadsheets and stuff like that. And she ran this division of all my data analysts. And only later on, now reflecting back on it, that wasn't her zone of genius. It wasn't running a spreadsheet. Her zone of genius was getting a team of people together, collaborating, kind of nurturing the team. She was a bit like a mother hen. And I just now regret looking back on what a difference it made to my team if I'd actually put her in the right role. But
and that's true of most companies. Companies. And the caution I would give too, in terms of profiling, if you're going to profile, make sure that you're using a profile that's validated for hiring. So the tool that I use is validated for hiring, is over 90% predictive of success. And what it does is evaluate 13 innate personality characteristics, things that are set by the time you're a few years into life. And they don't change based on preference. A lot of tools out there are preference based. You don't want to use a preference based because that can change from today to tomorrow. If it's innate personality characteristic, it's not changing unless a couple of things could happen. If you go through a traumatic divorce or loss of a child or something like that, that can actually change your personality to some degree. But for the most part, you want those that measure those things. I had in our staffing firm, my business partner and I we had profiled everybody. We'd done the Myers-Briggs just to get some of the preferences and introversion, extroversion, those kinds of things. But then we'd also use the Rembrandt portrait, which is the tool that I've been talking about. And so we took our entire staff out to dinner one night, and over dinner, we went through everybody's profiles. So everybody knew who everybody else was. And the next morning, I get a call from my business partner and he says, "You want to have breakfast?" I said, "Sure." So we stopped and had breakfast on the way to the office. And we get a phone call as we're leaving breakfast. And one of our gals says, "We just had a cat fight." I said, "Oh, no, you didn't. That doesn't happen in my company." And it didn't, because we worked so well at getting the right people and building that teamwork. We never had those issues. But that morning we did. Right after doing the profiles, we did. And there were two very young women. And so we get to the office and hear a little bit about it. And so I bring them into the conference room And I say, you can each bring a champion with you. You can bring somebody else on the staff that really gets you, that will stand
Yeah.
up for you no matter what. You can bring a champion with
Oh.
you. And then I put their scores up on the whiteboard. And it was so clear where the issue was. And we were able to explain it to them and show them what that difference in their personality was. And I said, and ladies, I said, this is not appropriate behavior in our firm. And we either resolve this or one or both of you are going to go down the road kicking rocks. We're not doing
Yeah.
it. And I have a picture of them standing at the counter afterwards, hugging. And did it resolve all their problems? No, but it resolved most of their problems. They now understood where the other person came from when they disagreed on things. And we don't always have to agree. We have to understand the other person's perspective and respect it. And too often we think it's my way or the highway. And that's one of the things about personality profiling is we all tend to think, oh, I am the norm. I don't think there is a norm. Yeah. It's not my way or the highway. We need to find a way to work together and respect the differences. And that makes for a good team.
Yeah, and I think that you really drive home there such an important point that actually we want people that are very different in our business in order to get those
Absolutely.
perspectives. The classic is here in the English government, although we've got better, but it used to be 60-year-old or something, white men, and nowadays, of course, women and stuff like that. But you had the old stereotype, their one view, and obviously nowadays we're much more appreciative that everyone has a different perspective. Actually, that's what we need, because otherwise, just looking through this lens,
Exactly.
we don't see all the other opportunities out there. So I think it's so important. I think when team members do understand, like you say, the strengths and the weakness, I don't like the word weaknesses, but opportunities for development, whatever you want to say,
Yes, thank you.
of other team members, you can support each other. And then we get back to what we started, which was we can work much more collaboratively together.
Exactly.
We're like, this person isn't just being really difficult, but they see something completely different to me.
It differently. And that's so true. We see things so differently, but we think our way is the right way for the most part.
Yeah, particularly when you're not exposed to having the opportunity to realize that. I remember after I'd left the corporate world and I did some NLP training and we talked about that. Everyone sees the world differently. And I'm like, I remember sitting there going, what are you talking about? Because I was in a corporate career. We hadn't done much personal development, really, a huge amount. And I was like, what do you mean? And so we started unpacking. So when some of my team members were late or different things were going on, they had this completely different view of the world. And I often go, we've all got our own set of glasses, literally or metaphorically. But we see different things through.
We do.
And it blew my mind, Regina, at that point when I learned that. I was like, God, that explains so much. I wish somebody had told me that years and years ago. And I'd actually understood that we were all different. We've all got different strengths, different opportunities to develop, all got a different lens that we look at the world. And life would have been so much easier if I'd known that.
And the truth is, none of those are right or wrong. They just are. They just are. And the more we can incorporate those differences into our decision making, as you just said, the more that we incorporate that in, the better decisions we make. Because now we are matching more of the larger community, appealing to more of that larger community with our message, because we're not doing the tunnel vision and only looking for this person.
Oh my God. I think there's so much we could talk about teamwork, but I'm conscious we've been talking for quite a long time. What were some final nuggets or gems of wisdom you'd like to share with the audience? There's a great takeaway from today. Feel free to share your contact details or how people can get in contact with you or anything else you'd like to.
Sure. So one piece of advice I would give to CEOs is to maintain a decision diary. Start recording the context, the rationale, the outcomes of your key decisions so that you create this living archive of insights that informs your future strategies. And over time, it becomes an essential resource to you, sharpens your strategic instincts, and ensures that every decision you make is aligned with your overarching vision. So that would
Wow.
be my advice, is to start doing that. Start keeping that journal of decisions.
I've never heard of that before. That's so interesting. I love that idea. I think I
Yeah.
probably realized I was a bit schizophrenic actually, and decision that I get. But then that's what happens, isn't it? If the
It is.
CEO doesn't raise a vision, or it will become very apparent looking back. I made decision A there. Now I've made B. Now we've gone in divergent directions rather than convergent
Right.
to get.
Yeah. It helps you be consistent while growing, I think, would be the way I
Yeah.
think of it. So my decisions, I'm not all over the map, but as I look back on my decisions, I should be able to see my growth as well, and the growth of my organization as I grow and implement from my own growth.
Awesome. Amazing. Wow. Thank you very much. So how can people get hold of you? Obviously add something in the show notes, but where's the best place
Sure,
that
the
people
best way
find you?
is probably through LinkedIn, and that is Regina Bergman.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll put that. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for everyone to get hold of you there. So Regina, thank you so much for your time today. We've really enjoyed chatting to you. I've loved talking about how we can hire better teams in and work more effectively as teams within organizations, because I just think that is, as I said, the competitive superpower we've all
It
got.
is.
But it could also be the competitive kryptonite if you don't get it right and you
Yes,
blow everything. The wrong
absolutely.
people in the wrong positions and everything goes to rubbish. Really important. So thank you so much for your time today. We
A
really
pleasure. I've enjoyed the
Thank you.
visit, Julia. Thank you.
You are so welcome. So everyone, until next week, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Impactful Teamwork podcast. Please stay tuned for future episodes and do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favorite platform. Recommendations are essential for attracting new listeners. Please follow us on social media at Julia Felton and at Business Horsepower. And if there are any topics you'd like us to cover on future episodes, please do let me know. Remember, you and your team are always making an impact. What impact will you make today?